As Oren had arranged, Eli now stuck to Avery's side at school. Though her classmates didn't stare at her anymore, their silence made her feel even more isolated. Just before her physics class began, Thea Caligaris sat down beside her at the lab table. Thea told Avery she was going to help with the new game. It was the first thing that had gotten Rebecca to engage in anything since Emily's death, and if Rebecca was helping Xander, Thea wanted in too. She then added, almost casually, that she knew about Toby. Avery noticed that Thea had also searched a poison tree, which meant that Xander must have told her about it. She also saw that Thea had searched for fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. On the way home from school, Avery looked it up herself. The fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine is a legal principle stating that evidence obtained illegally is inadmissible in court. Jameson asked her what she thought about it, but she didn't share her thoughts. When they arrived back at Hawthorne House, Avery headed straight to her wing. After waiting 15 minutes, she pulled a candlestick on her fireplace mantel, which triggered a hidden passage. The passage had been disabled previously by Oren when there was a security threat on the estate. As she stepped inside, she found Jameson already waiting for her. Without a word, they returned together to Toby's wing. Avery went directly to Toby's study and pulled one of the legal books from the shelf. She turned to the page about the fruit of the poisonous tree. Certain letters in specific words were blacked out. The notations continued for several pages, and occasionally, a punctuation mark had also been struck through. She recorded all the marked letters on her phone. Next, they returned to the clock, stuck at 12:05. Jameson said, "The fifth letter of the alphabet is E, and the 12th is L." Avery immediately ran to her room to retrieve the cipher disk. Jameson followed, but Avery's only focus was on getting there first. Once in her suite, she pulled the cipher disk from her desk drawer and aligned the fifth letter on the outer wheel, E, with the 12th letter on the inner wheel, L. When she decoded the message, it revealed another poem. Secrets, lies, all I despise. The tree is poison, don't you see? It poisoned S and Z and me. The evidence I stole is in the darkest hole. Light shall reveal all I writ upon the... Jameson read the poem aloud. He paused midway to point out that S stood for sky and Z for Zara. The last line was incomplete, ending with I writ upon the... There was a missing word, which needed to rhyme with all. Jameson whispered, wall. They both realized that something might be hidden inside the walls of Toby's wing, something that could be revealed using black light. They needed more than one black light, and only Xander had 7 of them. The 3 of them, Avery, Jameson, and Xander, lined Toby's suite with the lights and turned off all the overhead lighting. To their amazement, Toby had written his entire life across the walls of his wing. It looked like he had started when he was just 7 or 8 years old. His words carried a wild, restless energy, just like Xander. He wrote about conducting experiments, some involving explosives. He expressed deep admiration for his older sisters. He described entire days spent disappearing into the walls of the estate. And most of all, he wrote about how much he worshipped his father. Something had clearly changed after Toby's 16th birthday. The only entry he'd written at the time was, "They lied." It took him months, maybe even years, before he finally wrote it down in full. Toby wasn't Tobias Hawthorne's biological son. He was adopted. Alice Hawthorne had faked a pregnancy. When Toby turned 16, he discovered something. Proof that the adoption had been kept a secret. He wasn't even sure it had been legal. Why would anyone keep an adoption a secret? Xander asked, sounding genuinely baffled. If Toby Hawthorne wasn't biologically related to the Hawthornes, then he didn't share a single ounce of their DNA, and neither would his child. Something about Toby's writing caught Avery's eye. She had seen that handwriting before. I have a secret. She could still hear her mother's voice from less than a week before she died. About the day you were born. Later that night, sitting at Tobias Hawthorne's desk, Avery stared at her birth certificate, the one the billionaire had highlighted. The name listed as her father's was Ricky Graham's, but the handwriting, it was the same as the writing on the walls of Toby's wing. Toby Hawthorne had signed her birth certificate. Ricky Graham's had never truly been present while she was growing up. He hadn't answered the phone when her mother died. But Toby, he had shown up within days, and suddenly everything clicked. Maybe Tobias Hawthorne had left her everything because his son, Toby, was her father. Everything else, her birthday, her name, the entire puzzle that she and the Hawthorne brothers had thought they'd solved, was, as Jameson had called it in the tunnel, misdirection. Avery stood up, unable to sit still. She hadn't needed a father in a long time. She remembered how Harry used to scowl when she beat him at chess, though his eyes had always gleamed with pride. He used to call her princess and horrible girl. She had called him old man. She stepped onto the balcony, gasping for air. Down below, she spotted movement in the pool. Grayson was swimming, his arms slicing through the water in a brutal, punishing breaststroke. His pace was steady, relentless. It looked like he was trying to escape something. When he finally pulled himself out of the pool, something, some sixth sense, made him look up. He found her in the darkness, and for a long moment they just stared at each other. He was the first to look away. Back inside the office, Avery sat down again. Her eyes returned to the birth certificate. She couldn't pretend this didn't matter, even though he had let her live in her car and buy him breakfast. Despite coming from one of the richest families in the world, this changed everything. Toby Hawthorne is my father, she thought. She wanted answers. This wasn't just another mystery to solve or a new piece of a puzzle. It wasn't a game, not to her, not anymore. Jameson wanted to talk to her, but she didn't want to. I'm busy, she said. He leaned in and whispered directly into her ear, Toby Hawthorne is your father. Without a word, she followed Jameson. Eli followed her out of the main building, across the quad, and down a stone path to the art center. Inside, Jameson walked briskly past several studios until they reached the Black Box Theater, an enormous square room with black walls, a black floor, and stage lights built into the black ceiling. Jameson flipped a series of switches, illuminating the overhead lights. Eli stayed by the door while Avery followed Jameson to the far side of the room. Jameson looked at her. Was I wrong? He asked. Avery told him everything she knew. Let's call off the bet, he said. She agreed hesitantly. They decided to get some air, and 2 minutes later they were on the roof of the art center. They decided to get some air, and 2 minutes later they were on the roof of the art center. Eli didn't have a chance to position himself in the doorway before Jameson locked him out. Avery assured the bodyguard that she was fine. My grandfather always said that Hawthorne men had 9 lives, Jameson said. He was talking about Toby. The old man had known his son had survived, but he never hinted at it until he left the message for Xander. Find Tobias Hawthorne II. After holding Avery's gaze for a moment, Jameson disappeared behind a nearby column and returned with what looked like a roll of astroturf and a bucket of golf balls. He set the bucket down and unrolled the turf. Then he vanished again, reappearing with a golf club. He grabbed a ball from the bucket, placed it on the turf, and lined up his shot. He told Avery that he came up here to get away. Then he took his swing, and the golf ball soared off the roof of the art center and into the woods. They decided to get some air, and 2 minutes later, they were on the roof of the art center. Eli didn't get the chance to position himself in the doorway before Jameson locked him out. She assured the bodyguard that she was fine. My grandfather always said that Hawthorne men had 9 lives. She was talking about Toby. The old man had known his son survived, but he never hinted at it until he left the message for Xander. Find Tobias Hawthorne II. After holding her gaze a moment longer, Jameson disappeared behind a nearby column and returned with what looked like a roll of astroturf and a bucket of golf balls. He set the bucket down and rolled out the turf. Then he vanished again and came back with a golf club, snatching a ball from the bucket. He placed it on the turf and lined up his shot. He told Avery that he came up here to get away. Then he swung. The golf ball soared off the roof of the art center and into the woods. I'm not saying I think you're overwhelmed, Eris. I'm not saying I think you're hurting. I'm just saying, sometimes it feels good to smack the hell out of something. Avery thought this had to be against the rules. What rules? Jameson asked. Then he told her, there are no rules that matter more than winning. He paused for a moment. I don't know who my father is. Sky was never what you'd call maternal. The old man raised us. He made us in his own image. Zan has his mind. Grayson got the gravitas. Nash has a savior complex. And me? I don't know when to give up. He held out the golf club again, and this time Avery took it. She had never held one before, so on her first swing, she missed the ball entirely. Jameson stepped in to help. On her second try, he stood behind her, guiding her swing. Together, they hit the ball. Then Jameson shared something else. Tobias had changed his middle name to Tattersall right after Toby's supposed death, and not long after, he rewrote his will to disinherit the family. They decided they needed to see the original will. Avery called Elisa, who confirmed she could view the old document. But Elisa also wanted her to meet with Landon, the media consultant, right after school. Avery was suspicious. Why now? Elisa said Avery needed to be prepared for an interview within the next month. They had to control the narrative, not let her father take the lead. The next thing Avery had to do was get her bodyguard back onto the roof. After school, she met with Landon in the Oval Room,